I'm sure most of you know that today's panel discussion is about research from the eyes and perspective of international students. So I'm hoping that today we can learn not only about your research itself, but also the process and how you've had to navigate possible differences coming into the American context. Could be linguistically, culturally, academically, any differences, and similarities too, thinking about education that you may have done in other places, and your experience as a whole, and how you might give advice to other international students navigating some of the same processes. So we're going to start with some introductions. We'll have the panel members introduce themselves, and very quickly also the audience members, so we know a little bit about each other. I have some questions that I've put together that I'll facilitate, but I also hope that at the end we can open it up, or during the middle if you guys are comfortable, if someone has a pertinent question that they can ask right away. So let's start with our panel members. I'll let you guys introduce yourselves, and some questions you might want to think about: where you're from, how long you've been in the US, and just generally, or very specifically if you want, in a couple sentences, what are your research interests, and that could be your dissertation topic or just more general than that. So whoever wants to start, we don't have to go in any particular order.
I'll go. Yes, so hi everyone. Happy New Year to the Chinese. My name is Lucas Capalvo. I am in my 4th year PhD in kinesiology, aka sports science. I have been in the US for 4 years now, almost 4 years, and I'm from Brazil. My research, I have 2 research topics. One is my dissertation, the other one is more of like an applied. My dissertation is about how we can use sports to help refugees acculturate into the US. So basically the refugees come here, some of their family members, some by themselves. So we want to try to use sport as a platform for them to meet new people, learn about the norms and customs in the country. And the second one is coaching education. It's more of an applied. So I go around talking to coaches, try to help coaches be more effective in what they do, giving them some pedagogical strategies, because a lot of coaches, they have experience as players, but they lack a lot of technical experience as coaches. So we try to give them a little bit of structure so they can become a all-around capable coach. Yes.
Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Wenfei Huang. It is my 6th year here in the United States, and in the program, I come from China. And my dissertation is about photographic inquiry, or using photography as one arts-based educational research. That's my dissertation.
It's my turn. Hello, my name is Yue. I'm also a doctoral student in the curriculum instruction and teacher education program. So this is my 8th year in the United States. I got my master's and also working on PhD here. My research interest is preparing pre-service teachers to work with the culturally and linguistically diverse students. So for my dissertation work, I'm using narrative inquiry as the research methodology to understand the learning experiences of pre-service teachers and their sense-making with the learner.
My name is Idris Abubakar. I'm from Nigeria, and I'm in the Educational Administration PhD program. This is my 5th year in the PhD program, but this is my 7th year in the college because I did my master's here. My research interest is educational access of rural children and families in Nigeria. I'm specifically looking at young adolescent girls who migrate from their rural areas to cities to get education and better livelihoods right now.
All right, thank you. So for our audience members, just really quickly, if you want to share your name, what you study, how many years you've been studying, and any research interests you might have. I can start. For those of you who might not know me, I'm Rebecca Gordon, and I'm in the teacher education program. It's my 2nd year in the program, And very broadly, I'm interested in international experiences of language teachers.
Hi, my name is Eugene Oh. I'm in Doctoral Education Administration program. This is my first year, and my research interest is about how school leadership facilitate teacher learning program in school.
Hi, my name is Li Xueyin. I'm from China. I teach mathematics in China, mainly at the college level, like linear algebra, calculus, something like that. And also do some teacher professional development work. I'm going to stay here for 1 year.
Hello everyone, my name is Tian Tian. This is my third year of my master program, and I'm from Southwestern University of Chongqing, China. And my research interest is focused on special education in higher education.
Hi everyone, my name is Yi, and the major is curriculum and instruction. I'm in the second year of my master program, and my research interest is English education.
Hi everyone, I'm Li Ming from Southwest University. And this is also my second year in Southwest University. And my major is curriculum and instruction. And my interest is graduate student curriculum.
Hi everyone, my name is Li Huan. I'm the second year of the master program in China, and currently I'm doing the research about the career and technical education.
Hey everyone, I'm Adam. I'm a third year in the HALE program, it's the higher education program, and I study what happens to international students after they graduate. And I'm specifically looking at the optional practical training program and understanding that as a transition from college to career, negotiating this weird space between home and host and all these different things.
Right, back over there.
Hi, my name is Layla. I'm first year in curriculum instruction and the teacher education program. I'm interested in bilingual education and international career education.
Hi everyone, I'm Dana Kanhai. I'm a fourth year in the higher adult and lifelong education program. And my research interests are how faculty are interacting or supporting students, college students with autism.
Wonderful. Thank you, everyone. So let's jump right into our questions. It's up to you if you want to answer it. I don't think we have to go every person in order, but if this question speaks to you, feel free to answer, or if it makes you think of something else. But we're just going to start with this one. What has surprised you most about learning to do research here in your PhD program?
Okay, I'll show first.
Okay, thank you.
What surprised me most is 1.5 years ago, I think it's in the summer of 2017, I was told by my advisor that I can explore photography as my potential dissertation project. Because at that time I've told her it's my leisure hobby. I have no prior experiences from learning photography. I've never been in an arts program, but she asked me to explore that. I was intimidated by that freedom. That's one thing. Another, just an episode. One time I was taking Avner's class, Avner Siegel, Professor Avner Siegel, and he shared a scenario saying, from her point as a faculty member, saying sometimes when they advise PhD student, there is freedom that PhD student may not want to take. And when he told us in the class that when you think about dissertation committee, it's not, you have to do something, be approved. Sometimes you have to persuade them. So yeah, these two things.
Any other panelists want to answer this question?
I do, just a second.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for bringing the chair.
I think what surprised me the most is how strict human subjects is when you're collecting data. So for example, in my master's degree in Sweden, I collected data with juvenile juveniles in prison, and I didn't have to sign a single paper. So they're just like, oh yeah, go ahead. And here, there's always, like today when you started the panel, like, is everyone okay with the image? So being very careful with collecting data without authorization and consent from people, from parents, from young children. And because I noticed that here in the US, everyone's very concerned about lawsuits. So the university, of course, they want you to do a good job, but they also want to protect themselves from any potential problem with that.
Something surprised me, well, I would not say that's a surprise, but I've never thought about is the sense of ego in doing research. So what I meant by sense of ego is you always have to think about your positionality as a researcher and who you are as a person while you are doing research. So I can give an example. I've always doing, interviews are really important technique for data collection. And to me, transcribing is just a technique that we always do. However, I took a class where we talked about how you format a transcript really reflect on what you believe about research and about your own voice and your participants' voices. So when you're, for example, a lot of times we're just having the transcript in a linear way. So here's the interviewer, interviewee, interviewer, interviewee. So you always notice in the beginning that who asked a question, that's yourself. However, on the flip side, if you really want to honor your participants' voices, probably you can think about having two columns and start having your questions on the right-hand side and then have their answers on the left. So in that sense, you start from the left, you start to notice their voices first before looking at your own question. So those are the things that I become more aware and more mindful when I'm analyzing my data and also interpreting the data, because you are always, we're a human being, we're always biased. It's okay for that, but you need to be aware and more conscious and reflective of your biases when doing research.
Okay, I agree with all the comments. Coming from a British educational system in Nigeria, and in our undergraduate program, we do what we call project. It's sort of undergraduate thesis, but you really conduct an original research, depending on your area of interest, whether you are doing like qualitative research or quantitative research. But before you can get your undergraduate diploma, you need to have a thesis. It is a requirement for you to graduate after passing all your classes and examinations. And most of us go into that with a kind of research problem like that is already set that you want to explore. So you don't go into that stage. You go to your advisor and say, this is what I want to do. The advisor will look at it and advise, I think, accordingly. And most likely you're going to do that because that's what you chose to do. So there is that freedom that one mentioned that I made here, but I think to move the freedom a little bit further in the US context or in Ericsson context is the openness of you to explore like different research possibilities, either within the US or internationally, but also the time space that you have for you to think, to develop that research idea, and then I think immerse yourself into the paradigm or the methods of data collection that you think will be appropriate for that research that you are, let me say, intending to do for your PhD dissertation. So for me, it was really amazing that I have to do coursework for 3 years. My friends who go to UK and do PhD, they have finished long ago. In my 7th year, they keep asking me every day, what are you doing? I told them, when you are about to finish, I don't even have a research topic. So for me, that is really like a special experience that I really appreciate. I think it has advantages. As much I think it has like this time disadvantage, but I think it makes me a strong researcher. I'm very thankful and I think prepared to conduct like rigorous research wherever I find myself.
Thank you. Some of you touched on this already, about the methodologies that you've used, and how did you decide to use that methodology?
Okay, I'll start again. So, if many of you have been very familiar with either quantitative methodologies or qualitative, I will identify myself as doing humanities-oriented research at large. So that's something I'm glad I had that exposure by taking the humanities-oriented research methods offered by a professor in our department. Give you some example. There are different genres and disciplines like arts, like philosophy education, right? The humanities, and historical studies of education. And yeah, I think that's the major ones I can think of. But on the other side, how do I decide to use them? Well, it's very difficult to describe. So usually I think in our program, we are required to take methodology courses. And in that process, we get to choose based on what we are interested with. I'm just bring out one issue. It was like later in my years, I get to learn that like inspiration. Sometimes we get to choose the methodology based on our own personality as well, because different methodologies imply different lifestyles. Like if you're doing humanities, you doing historiography, you go to archives, libraries. If you are doing like ethnography, qualitative, you get to interact with participants. There are different ways. And when I do photography, it's something also emerged from the process. It's not like, yeah, they're using metaphors like a supermarket. There's a supermarket of methodologies. You get to wander in the supermarket and get to choose one, but that's a perspective of consumerism. Your consumer existing methodologies, but on the other side, something I've learned from doing PhD here, you're also creating your own. You have to articulate your own methodology through a practical process by having conversations with existing research paradigms and methods. So that's the creative part. We're not consumers of all the methodology courses, materials, and get to imitate them. It's part of that, but it's more than that.
Yeah, I would agree with that, because for me, most of my research is on using qualitative, like different ways, but the big umbrella is qualitative. And I think this is an extension of my personality and how I see the world.
Yeah.
So my worldview, like I cannot, numbers don't tell me anything, even though like they're significant and everything is being done correctly in the data collection, but I cannot see pattern in numbers. But I'm really good at seeing patterns in people's behavior. Like I can have more of it's easier for me to like watch people behaving and kind of establishing patterns based on like my previous knowledge as well. So I feel like when it's in qualitative studies, I'm able to be myself. I'm able to like put my own worldview to the data. And so yeah, I feel like the default that I realize here is that people assume they always go for quantitative. So if you're like me, you prefer more qualitative, make sure you talk to your professors, your advisor, because they usually, to what I understood, they expect you to take a lot of quantitative methods. And I told him like I can take if it's mandatory, but if it's not mandatory, I prefer to get better in what I like. So then I was able to actually change my my coursework and take a lot of program evaluation, mixed methods, qualitative, and I'm a much happier person than trying to like PSS on things. I appreciate people who do it,
You may
but not me.
just a brief sum up. I read that in an educational ethnographer's work. I don't right now can't remember his name, but he said that he chose ethnography because he likes to meet people, and he is really good at having conversations with people. And when he's, because doing PhD is like your research and study is an important part of your life. If you don't enjoy it, why doing that, So I'm choosing that. Think about what I like, what I'm good at.
So I think as Lucas and UK said, I just want to add that in Ericsson we have the time and the opportunity to take classes in both quantitative and qualitative classes. And I think this is what I see auditioning window. So you are auditioning to see which of the, I will say methodology that fits into your own personal interest and maybe your research or PhD dissertation interest. And I think to my own dissertation, I opted to use a qualitative method because I am looking at the experiences of these young people because they are moving from one place to another and because of the context, two different contexts. So I want to see how the local context shape their behavior, as Lucas said, as they move and what they get out of it and how they become maybe different human beings because of that movement. That education is one of the, I think, motivating factors for them moving from their own local areas to cities or towns to be educated. So I will say your research topic, as well as your own personality and interests, I think should guide what methodology you go for. But we have people who say, well, I want to do mixed methods. So you can also explore that. And I think there is nothing wrong between, I think the debate is very clear whether quantitative is better or qualitative is better or mixed method is better. I think you do what is right for yourself and for the topic and for the people that you are trying to project their own voices and lives. You think of, is it the appropriate channel for me to project these people that don't have the power? Because you have the power as the person who is the final reporter of whatever those people either feel in surveys or the interviews or the documents you are able to collect, as the case may be. So you have to take yourself as somebody who is taking a social trust of responsibility. Is this method the right method for me to open the lives of these people in a way that they will do it themselves if they have the opportunity and the tools for them to do it?
I was going to add one little thing. Also need to make sure that the advisor also likes the type of method that you choose, because I've seen professors that they don't believe in qualitative. Every time they read a qualitative in class, they're like, this is not data. So making sure that either the person believes in that method too, or is at least flexible to let you explore that side, because otherwise you will do what they do. It's a big risk.
And I want to add one more thing. Probably be more mindful, because I think writing, or while I'm thinking about research methodology, I try to start with the input. It's what are the research that I enjoy reading? And I think that's really important, especially when you are producing, because you have to really enjoy the process of writing it up. And also, I think it's really important to have the mentor text. So a lot of times while we're doing a literature review, we tend to focus on the content of the paper. We tend not to look at how, the methodology section. As a new researcher, I remember I tried to skip that part because that got me bored. Mm-hmm. But now that I'm realizing it's really important to have a more focus on the methodology part. And then when I see something that are not in my research field, but are something that I can draw on from the methodological perspective, I tend to keep them and save it for the methodology folder. So I would suggest when you are doing literature review, do a literature review for the topic, but also a review for the methodology. I think that's really important.
Great. So the next question we maybe touched on related to the other two, but you may have other challenges that you've experienced in your journey thus far. And thinking again through the lens of being an international researcher. So, and if you have addressed those, most likely we'd also like to hear the happy side of it, the solution of what you did when you encountered those challenges.
So I will jump in. I think research in general is demanding and challenging. whether it is a domestic research or international research. But it's even more demanding and challenging when it is international. And there are many reasons for that. Demanding part is you have to navigate two different contexts and cultures. And when I say contexts and cultures, I mean the educational system and the educational culture. Because different people, as I gave example, with the British way of doing PhD research. So you go into the PhD program with your research topic set. So once you get there, you don't have to do coursework as we do for 3 years. You just start your research. And before you know it, in 3 years, you are done. So my own experience for my ongoing PhD dissertation that I'm doing in Nigeria, the demanding part is I have to explain so much to the committee members that I have here, even though they have a general understanding of the subject or the topic, but they don't have the knowledge of the Nigerian context. And that comes to how you pull resources in terms of faculty members. So what I did is I looked into different areas outside Erickson Hall. Like MSU have area studies and centers, like the African Studies Center, and different departments. And I pull out people that have expertise, either in Africa or in Nigeria or on the topic. So on my committee, I have people representing different research backgrounds in terms of their own methodological expertise, or the content which they are teaching, or what they are doing internationally. So that is one part of it. So it is more work for you to go out and reach out to people who will be useful and supportive for you to be able to carry out this research. The challenging part is, I think one of the major one, I think, is resources, because research demands money, whether you are doing it here on MSU campus or you are doing it over in Nigeria. Wherever you are doing research is money, I think, consuming exercise. So I think one of the challenges I find or I encountered is finding money to travel to Nigeria as often as I would like. Thankfully, I think in College of Education we have some summer research funding, and I began to explore those ones before I actually make my proposal ready, because it is a good idea for you to do preliminary studies. And doing preliminary studies, I think, has so many benefits. One of it is for you to start to familiarize yourself with the process of doing the research, and also the people that will be contributing or supporting you on the ground. So I think I will stop at this because I know my colleagues have more to add, but I will come back when I think I have something different to say.
One thing that I've been trying not to do is don't think or don't assume I have to advocate for my culture or country or people. Because I feel a lot of times as international scholar, we have the tendency of doing comparative. I mean, the comparisons, 24/7 in our mind, right? But a lot of times when we're doing research, I will give a very concrete example. I was co-authoring with one of my colleagues about our experiences as international teacher educators teaching multicultural education courses here. So one part is our positioning, right? The different space and different experiences and our migrating across time and space, and what are the implications of us making sense of the curriculum here. But then the idea of the Western versus Eastern culture has come up very often in our piece. However, we need to be very mindful what we meant by Western and what we meant by Eastern, because we come from different countries. We have very unique experience, and we don't want to advocate for, I'm from the East, so I speak for East. We can't, right? So I think that's really, really important. Do not make assumption that you know everything, and do not, I don't know whether that's the right term of using it. Do not necessarily, you don't have to play the card of being international in your research, and probably be more humble to your culture while you are presenting it.
Oh, I'll go.
That's what I'm
I feel like if you're lucky to do research in your own country, I feel like that helps because you already know the context and everything. But I see my research I'm not researching people back home, I'm researching people here in a different context, culture. So it's very easy for people to I'm just gonna see how things work here, but I'm like having my Brazilian mindset to look at problems here. So I highly recommend, and that's how I solve this problem, by volunteering. So I volunteer with this program that I'm collecting data from, because I wanted to understand like what these kids were doing. Like I spent some days in their school, seeing like their day-to-day, because it's completely different than school days in Brazil. So if there's something that I could share with you, is just if you're collecting data from American people in American context, get to know them. Get to know them, volunteer, be part of it, and then like you're gonna realize that that might be very different than what we expect things to do, but put some effort into being on the field.
Mine is, it's kind of related to what I shared, before. I feel like one big challenge for me, is unexpected freedom I was given because of, the design of the program. Like what Idris said, it's not like UK system. Even like the doctoral education in Hong Kong, you go there, you already have a research proposal. So you use the PhD program to finish the research, write up the dissertation. But here in our program, I don't know in kinesiology, but in teacher education, we have 5 years, 3 years of coursework. It's actually, later on I talked to my advisor, I realized it's actually also a period where you can get off the ground a little bit, off the track, and maybe explore something else. For example, I've never imagined in my beginning years I'll do something around photography, art-based research, because I have a master background back in China about philosophy of education. But that's also the reason why in the beginning I was in a drifting stage, because here we don't have a philosophy of education program in MSU. They have in other college of educations, like in other universities, but here no. So I have to find my place. In the beginning it was painful because I don't find, very quickly fit the most suitable advisor program courses. But now I realize that's actually kind of advantage in a sense, because I was forced to try to take courses outside of that, and see what I may feel more attracted to. So yeah, I would say that just in those challenges, part of that is just endurance. Just endure that, not being settled, and you have to find something, searching something. Yeah.
And a quick add-on to this point in terms of challenges. When I was going back to Nigeria, I was saying, this is easy, this is home. I went to high school in Nigeria. I did my undergraduate thesis in Nigeria. I speak the language, so thinking that I know everything, right? And I forgot that I spent 5 years from my master's to my candidacy before I designed this research and say, okay, I'm back here now from MSU, and here is the plan. They say, what are you talking about? So because I'm bringing a different perspective of research, I'm communicating in a different research language. I'm totally a different person now, coming with different things, even though I'm an insider speaking the language. So I also have to navigate difficulty, like explaining to the locals that this is my research and this is what I want you to do. So that took me longer than I imagined, because I'm like them, I'm not like white. I speak the language, they know my families, I know their families. So even recruiting, I have people to help me to do that. But I found myself struggling, just as I struggle, not being an advocate, but to make things clear that this is researchable, this has potential, and this can be completed. I think that is what the committee wants. So I succeeded doing that. Now I'm going here to do it now. These people are saying, what are you saying? We don't know what you're going to do. So will I come back to the committee now and say I went to Nigeria and these people don't understand what I'm going to do. So I will say, as Lucas said, if you want to research people, whether in your home country or abroad, I think relationships are very critical before you go and tell them, here are some questions. Because it's like, take for instance, you are in your house and somebody just come and knock on your door and just hand you something to fill. It's going to shock you. But if it's somebody who has created relationships with you before, right, and on the process say, you know what, I have this interest and I have been working on this interest, and I think you are one of the potential people that can contribute, to this process, and the person understood, he or she, agreed, voluntarily to participate, you will see that the process of getting that person to be part of that research is easier than when you just appeared from nowhere, even though you have good intentions. But just as much as you think you know, just think that those people don't know anything. Even in my own home culture, I found out that people don't know like what I'm talking about. Here is the program, I know the program, but I say this is it, they say, but we don't understand. So try to create a relationship, and I think in the creation of the relationship, you want to look at what we call gatekeepers. So like people of authority first. Because in my culture in Nigeria, you cannot just go and start talking to people in the community, especially in rural communities, because they have like leaders. So you cannot just go and say, oh, because I'm from here, so now I have all the authority to do whatever I want to do. So I have to go through the leaders of the community to say, this is who I am, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm trying to do now, and I'm seeking for your assistance to be part of this, and then to let the people of the community participate. Even that took me a long process for them to really make sense, because they are afraid, if I take this information, what do I do with it? Would this information be used for good against them or for worse against them? So people have that fear. And as participants, no matter the level of education, they are aware when you are trying to unlock their lives when they are not ready. Yeah, we may be advanced in what we do in terms of the process of conducting the research, but they have their own agency of resistance. If a participant is not willing, he or she can refuse to answer the question or give you yes or no answer. If you are doing a qualitative research, you would like the person to sit and have a friendly, thorough conversation with you. Because the point you are looking at, the participant will not drop it at the time when you want it. But in that moment of relaxation and having that friendly conversation, you will find the data that is going to help you to answer your research question. So I think relationships, knowing the critical stakeholders in the community, whether it is school or a whole community, and also, as Lucas said, volunteering, making yourself like being like part of the community, or part of the program, or part of the process, so that people can have that confidence and trust in you.
All right, I think I have 2 more questions. This one is to speak to the audience members, but also thinking from a personal perspective. What do you wish you could tell your younger PhD self that you have learned along the way? Is there anything you wish you would have done differently in your studies or your research?
My answer is no.
Nope, you do it the same. That's great. I don't think there's any shame in that.
I would say have more trust in yourself. Because I go back to an earlier question we were asked, so what research methodology that I've used? I have now just jotting those down: narrative, case study, content analysis, discourse analysis, autoethnography. So I would say that those are more or less related to language, because I'm a language person. I was an English major, I taught English when I was in China, but then when I came to the United States, the idea of non-native speaker, I was haunted by the idea. I lost confidence and trust in myself. And I was like, if I do a lot of language-related research methodology, am I sensitive enough to notice those patterns? Because I'm not a native speaker, will I notice the nuances in that? However, we have to understand that as a second language learner, we have more explicit instruction of learning English as second language. We learn a lot of grammar, syntax, whatever. That will give us a lot of advantage than disadvantage as a second language learner when we're doing qualitative research. So I would say, I would probably talk to the younger me, like be more confident. Just do it. Do not have, do not question yourself because you know much more than you thought you do.
Well, I think for me, I would say, especially speaking to doing research across boundaries, I think expect the unexpected. Expect the unexpected in many levels in terms of your preparation. No matter how much you prepared, you should be flexible and be ready to adjust and adapt. And in the adaptation, make sure that you are always in contact with your resources. What I mean, your resources, I think for our dissertation, your committee members, right? Make sure whatever decision you are making the right decision, and the experienced people that trust your judgment and say, now you are ready to go to the field and represent us. Make sure that they are in the loop of the challenges that you are encountering and how you are resolving those things, because I found those, I think, really critical. Because when I was in the field, I was thinking I was in like a fire outbreak. And I don't have any water tank for me to, quench the fire. But as I said, flexibility is very important when you are doing research, because many things will change and many new things will emerge, and you need to be ready to, I think, assimilate yourself into those changes, whether for good or for bad. But I think the last thing I want to say on that is perseverance is very important in doing research. Because no matter how much you are in love with your research, sometimes it can become boring, because it's one thing you do over and over again. So I think perseverance is a very important thing, because sometimes you just become bored with the work. You have reached a saturation level, and you still have maybe time for you or more chapters for you to write before they will say this is acceptable, now you can go.
I want to add one more thing. I think I probably mentioned that during a previous panel talk. I feel the longer that I stay in the U.S., I become less native in the academic language of Chinese. So I feel like I'm illiterate when I'm reading Chinese journal articles. I would say still keep up with what's going on in your own country. Never say, oh, I'm here in the United States, so I want to really practice my English, so I read English only. That is not good for you in the longer run. So now I feel that this really dichotomy in my identity. When I'm in daily life, I'm a Chinese native speaker, but in academia, I'm an English native speaker. I don't see these two are merged, and I think that sometimes is detrimental to me when I'm thinking about my career back in China. Because it's hard for me to articulate my research in Chinese. So I would say still read Chinese or the Korean or whatever your home language is in academia. It's really important.
For me, I'm struggling to find an answer, because I feel like right now I'm doing photography. Maybe I can say to my first year self, saying, just be brave, take the Britain, have more chances and time to take arts classes. But on the other hand, I feel what leads me to my current stage is nothing dispensable. It's like I cannot say if I'm doing something better, I will be a better stage at this moment. I feel what I've struggled before helps me to realize at this point, and the process of just playing with photography all by myself actually becomes a quite inspiring pedagogy for myself, because I finally got a chance doing something without any prior disciplinary trainings or mindsets. So actually that's kind of freedom. So when I'm hesitant to say, if you are interested in photography, take photography courses. Now I feel after a period of self-exploration and just try things out, just stay purely driven by personal interest, I'm at a better point of taking a professional photography class. Right now I'm taking one from arts department, even at the dissertation stage. So I feel that's a question really making me think about that. Yeah, it's hard to know.
Yeah, you remind me of the butterfly effect, the idea that if you change one thing, everything else changes. So even if you gave yourself that advice, what would happen if you actually followed it? Yeah, you might be in a completely different place right now.
Yeah.
All right, well, the last question, I just wanted to end on a positive note before we open this up. We've talked about challenges and struggles and things that you had to navigate in a difficult way. I'm wondering if you would like to each share some kind of success that you've had as a graduate student, something that you're proud of. Hopefully you don't have to think too hard to come up with something.
Okay, I'll share just a short note. I feel not necessarily success. Maybe I'm proud of that after, despite of the difficulties and some depressing periods, I've come to a point, I feel I've become a more braver and independent person. I feel that's a gift what this period of life has given me, studying abroad. Become more independent, also in my, not only in my ordinary life, living as a foreigner here, but also like independent, being independent in the sense of thinking. Because I'll say directly, when I was back in China, having my degree, we have in certain corners of academia, there is a sense of hierarchy and that kind of obedience for the big persons. So at today's stage, when I having a life here, I was more conscious of that. And I'm reminding myself, because I'm also developing my academic or intellectual self, embedding within so many voices, big scholars or the mainstream scholars. So I have to figure out and constantly make judgments, how I defend myself. So in a sense, actually relating to Lucas' sharing, here in the United States as well, maybe also because my advisor's background, when you are choosing something you are passionate about, you're choosing some topic or research approach or methodology, but which may not be the mainstream or the hot research paradigm. And when you want to show your work to people who maybe are not familiar about that, maybe have some biases about that, how one can defend for oneself. Now I feel that's actually will be a future challenge of myself. But still, I feel if you are truly believe in who you are, what direction you are going, what you are doing, I feel that's some disposition skills I have to constantly be aware of and develop.
For me, I think it's taking the methodology, knowledge, and skills to do my field work, collecting my data, analyzing my data, and now writing up the findings, seeing the completion of the project in sight. I think I'm very proud that I'm about to finish this dissertation.
This completion is already
Yeah.
making us proud of ourselves.
Because I can do it.
I go. Yeah, I have two things that I'm very proud of. First one, I'm a better professional overall. I'm not the best, but I write better, I talk better, I present better, I prepare better. Everything. I look at myself in my first year, and I can, if you compare both of my papers, like you can see the difference. If you see my first lecture, my lecture that I just gave up here, I'm just better at different things, so I improved a lot. And the second thing that I got from the PhD is I'm able to be very critical. I think sometimes way too much. But every time someone is doing something or a political party is approaching something, I'm able to try to go to their perspective and see like what is making these people do what they want to do. And I'm able just to see that just people think different than I think, and at the end of the day, they might want to try to do the same thing, but it's just in a different route. So that critical eye and that respect to other different perspectives doesn't mean that like I'm gonna let you do whatever you want to do to debate with me, but at least I'm able to get out of my worldview and get into someone else's.
I would say that I will go back to my first answer. That what surprised me most, and I think that's where I feel most proud of. It's a growing consciousness of self. I don't feel I took care of myself enough earlier in this process, and I didn't feel my feeling was important. I didn't tend to notice my presence in my research, in my teaching, in my work and life. But I think now I tend to be more reflective and more conscious of my being in this world and how I approach life and research and teaching. And I think that's what I consider as being more intentional and being more mindful as a human being. So I feel like I'm living my life more purposefully. So I think that's really important, because you don't want to live a life just because you were given a life by your parents. Right? You want to use it more intentional. So I would say I'm more intentional. That's what I'm proud of.
I'll add one last note. Kind of similar as you. It's kind of actually talking about this from an existential sense.
Yeah.
So for me, I am proud of that. I am more being able to embrace uncertainty and messiness in life.
Yeah.
That's being more patient with myself and see how myself is an unfinished project.
And with more possibilities.
Yes.
That's beautiful. I'm not going to add anything more to that. With those words. And just open up the floor for any questions if you want to address it to the whole panel or to one specific person. Either way is okay. And vice versa. If you guys have anything you want to ask of the audience members, that's welcome too.
I have a question. When you conduct the research in U.S., what are I think you already mentioned about limitation, but what are the limitations and benefits as international researcher, not native, scholar here? So I just want to know. Yeah.
I'll start. I think, especially again, I'm doing qualitative research. I wouldn't say that's better according to my definition. I think we sometimes can ask better question. That sounds bad, but I would say better question. I cannot think of other adjective that. So for example, because of our translingual and transnational experiences, I think we are more sensitive to some of the responses of the participants. And I didn't notice that. Some people read my work, read my transcript, they notice that. Like how I synthesized information, how I responded my research participants' questions have my own mark on that. That is influenced by my own identity and my experiences as an international native speaker, educator, and researcher. So I would say, again, have more trust in yourself. Because sometimes you might trigger data better than you expected.
I have one benefit, but it's not really in research, but it's more in teaching. I feel like being an international TA here adds a flavor into the program, in the sense that like when I'm teaching the class, like I'm always coming from perspectives that the students wouldn't expect. Like I make a joke that maybe it's not funny, but that they are like trying to understand. They're trying to understand like my perspective. For example, my class, I talk about coaching. So I'm not using, because like if you grow up here, you're gonna listen from 4 sports, and now basically you're expecting all the examples. So they're not being challenged. It's something that they know. So like I'm bringing like a different sport, and I say, oh, in Brazil we do this, and they're like, oh, interesting. So they see that there's a different way of doing things, and I feel like students more and more come to me and say like, it's so interesting that you're showing that perspective. I never thought about that, and that's not something that I plan to say in class. It's something that it's naturally just how I see the world, and also like when I'm, it also can be a little tricky when I'm evaluating students. The way I ask questions, I hit them in a way that they're not trained to answer. So for example, I'm just going to give a very general one. So people here, to my understanding, they're very trained to do multiple choice. And multiple choice for me like doesn't tell me that you know. It tells me that you memorize. That's how we are taught back home. So I throw them some like open-ended questions that they don't know how to answer. They don't know how to structure. So it's just funny because some of the students they actually like are more communicative. They come to me and they give an honest feedback. They tell me that they're being challenged because they're like I've never written an open-ended question before. Like I just check the mark what I think is right. So I feel like you're gonna add a flavor. We add a flavor to them that some students might take that in the wrong way, but there are a few of them because it's not what I like to hear. Therefore, I'm not gonna pay attention. But it's like one or two. Everybody else, like you see the machine here. It's interesting.
Other questions?
I have a question. This is selfishly related to my research interests. How do you envision the next couple of years as you wrap up what's happening here? How do you think? What do you think how do you think this program will have prepared you, and what challenges do you anticipate facing, and how do you think about addressing those?
Okay, for me, because I'm like you, we are planning to graduate this spring semester. So
Not planning, we are graduating.
oh yes, we have no interest.
Yes.
We have no extra time.
And you too, right?
Yeah.
Me too.
All four of you.
Let's go do it.
Get us out of here.
Yeah. So while I have wild dreams, whether I could, have the luxury of doing an arts program, but right now it's not that realistic. So, but I think I'll go back to China, find a job. That's the practical for me. Find a faculty position, maybe in college of education, doing my research. But the challenge is that, like what we explained, while I was kind of more familiar than some Chinese academia than her because I earned my master there. So I know some language, but when I try to continue my current work,
Right.
I've learned that it does take time. So
Right.
just be patient to do that translation. Translation to talk about my work here, my dissertation here in Chinese instead of English. So that will be the challenge. But another part is that I want to continue my practice as a serious amateur photographer and doing projects. So that's the part I'm excited about and see what's the possibility. Yeah, I worry I may not have the luxury time to do that, but I envision.
I think for me, reflecting back from where I started 7 years ago and leaving Nigeria for Michigan, I think that prepared me for taking risk and uncertainties. And I think over these 7 years, either from classwork to projects to the dissertation that is ongoing, I think I have managed several crises. And crisis can be personal crisis or academic crisis or career crisis or family crisis. So I think we are well prepared, even though it may be very challenging and maybe discouraging, but I think we have grown the nerves, I think, to navigate, multiple, I will say, contexts of either opportunities or challenges. For me, I'm open to going back to Nigeria, but I'm open to even going to Brazil. If there's an opportunity, I'm ready. Just the way I came to Michigan State without knowing anybody. And I came with a sweater because I was told it was cold. And when I came, people said, "Do you know where you are?" I said, "No, I was told it was cold because I never see snow." But I took the risk, come even though I came and find the reality and adjusted to the realities accordingly. So I think we have that flexible mind. As tough as the situation might be, I think our resilience skills and perseverance, I think, will continue to make us being successful regardless of the challenge, because challenges are natural. And I see my PhD program actually as a form of encountering challenges.
Right. It's conditioning.
Yeah, and also like problem solving the challenges, whether in my personal life or in the research that I do or in teaching. Because every day you wake up, you are presented with different challenges. And for some of us, for coming here, going back home, not finishing this project is a no, 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 no. So no matter even if it is a mountain size of a challenge, you will say, you know what? You look back and say, I have to climb. So.
I just feel, Idris, you're much more confident. Because one thing I just think one challenge for me is kind of reverse culture shock. When I go back to China's academia, the environment might be different, while all here they're products driven. Like publish or perish. It's even more than in China. So okay, that's something I need to cope with, and also the culture, particularly for women at a certain age. So I have to constantly remind myself, not to drag down by those forces. How I can, like, reassure, still honoring my own voice and keep growing that voice. I feel that's all.
I think my challenge is very similar to hers. So back home in Brazil, I was considered to be a type A person. In the US, I'm a type C. Because the type A here is just that the work pace in the US is much harder. People, to my understanding, they relax 100% or they work 100%. So my fear is that going to, like working with like some people in Europe and also in South America, is getting me frustrated. Because I'm like, can we set a deadline for this? Let's get this done, or let's write down something quick. So I feel I'm like much faster worker than they are. And then I feel like right in the beginning I might get frustrated because I want to accomplish a lot of things, but they're like, no, let's just do it mañana, tomorrow, yeah. Yeah, so I'm already facing that, but I feel like once I'm there, I'm gonna be like, oh God, nothing's moving in this. Yeah.
I don't know whether I'm the only person now on the market, the job market. And I think MSU has really done a fantastic job of getting people career ready. So I have a couple interviews, and the kind of question I think they asked, I think MSU gave me a lot of opportunities. So for example, in a higher ed institution in the US, you will do research, right? A lot of opportunities are given here that you will pair with faculty member, you will do research. And you have this practical, you have to do research anyways. Teaching, and I'm not quite sure about other departments, but TE we're teaching a lot. And we are giving we don't have a lot of options, but I think in a good way. Because that gave us a wide variety of classes. And now a lot of institutions are experiencing a budgeting issue. They would love to see people who can teach a variety of courses that is out of your expertise. And then advising. We have a lot of, I would say, infrastructure here. For example, the mentoring, that you will mentor the beginning students. And this really gives you a lot of language and ideas to talk about your experience at MSU that get you prepared for your job. And again, I didn't feel like I prepared that much for the interviews, but I think those things just came out very naturally. So now I'm thinking back, and I'm really grateful that MSU are pushing us to work really hard. I didn't realize in my first couple of years, but now I'm very grateful about that.
Probably have time for one or two more questions.
Yeah, I have a question. Many of you mentioned you are conducting qualitative research and am doing qualitative research as well. And interviewing is a very important part of my dissertation. And I always keep thinking, how can I get more useful, more helpful information from my participants? So I was wondering, for you guys, what is the best type of interview in your study? I know maybe it depends on your research design or what you want to accomplish. So could you please introduce some positive experience when you are conducting interview?
Yep. What I would say that it's been working for me is every time I'm designing, now that I learned before I didn't do like that, but when I'm designing interview protocol, I'm not just like in my mind, just me revising it. I try to get other people to look at it and think about it. And the second thing that I saw that is very helpful is actually piloting, because I've done studies in qualitative that I didn't pilot. I just went there and then I got home, I'm like, oh God, I should have asked this, and this. But once you pilot, you test those questions with one or two people that are actually from the context you want. And you're home and like, oh, I should have followed up here. When you listen to your own recordings, you start learning. So I think it's a matter of practice. So if you can, I teach my coaching students that don't let your first game be the tournament game. Have some like mock games before, so you can fail when it doesn't matter. Because when the tournament starts, you don't want to lose it. So you make sure that once you go to the tournament, everything is organized, so you can get the best you can get at that moment.
I can share 2 strategies, and I think I can share with Rebecca later, because I benefited a lot from that. I listened to a TED Talk. I think the title is similar to How to Be a Good Listener. But I benefited, they talked about 10 strategies that I benefited a lot as doing interviews. Because a lot of times we have a tendency of filling the gaps. But when doing research, you probably do not want to put your words in their mouths. So just give them more time. There are a lot of other strategies, but I think that's a resource that you can use. Try to learn better how to be a listener. The other thing is you really using multimodality in providing them more options of giving answers. So for example, one research question that I asked was my dissertation is, because my dissertation is about learning experiences of pre-service teachers. So I asked, please use a metaphor to describe your learning experience. So, and they gave a lot of very good metaphors. And some say, it's really hard for me to verbalize it. Can I draw it to you? And I think that really opened the question and really pushed them to think, what are some better ways of representing their ideas? Because a lot of times, semiotics is also language, and we tend not to, a lot of times we didn't use them, but they are a really good way of trigger. Or sometimes you can have, well, that would change your interview nature of it a little bit, but you can use intervention-related interviews. So for example, you can give them something to look at, to read, to listen to, and then that's intervention because you are sort of influencing what kind of response you will provide. But again, that's another way of giving you something that you may not get if just by asking questions.
So I would say interviewing whether you decide to use open-ended questions or closed-ended questions, I think there are 2 critical things that you need to take into consideration as an interviewer. One is patience. Don't be in a hurry with your participants. Because participants are also humans like us. They have personal lives or professional lives. You may go, you really need that data or interview that day because you are on time, you are on schedule. You want to get this done, transcribe it, and move on and all of that. So you should be patient to gauge if it is the right time for the participant to feel comfortable, especially in the location where you're having the interview. And there is nothing wrong in my experience to say, I think I have enough today. would you mind if I follow up with you maybe in so and so date? So maybe you may be lucky the participants in a better mood and ready to answer those questions as detailed, because in qualitative research, the more the merrier. We don't want short answers. If a participant can take 30 minutes to answer a question, I will be jumping and dancing. Because that means that is much data and richer data that I can extract from that long conversation than somebody who just answered a question in 1 minute or 2 minutes. So be patient. Be ready and flexible to call it a day, even if you haven't achieved your intended answer, to come back when it is appropriate. Also be mindful of the location, because we are asking people technically to open their secrets, whether it is personal secrets or professional secrets, because whatever is personal to me is my own property, and I choose who I share with. And as a person, I share my personal secrets with people that I trust. So you want to build a trusting relationship, and I think Lucas talked about piloting your study. So you try to test run the questions to see how people are responding, right? Maybe there is something that has to do with the way the questions are structured, or what the question is intended to elicit or to bring out from the participant. Then you can go back, adjust, and make sure you have, like, as I said, different people give different opinions, whether the questions are ready or they are appropriate questions that you are asking. But I think two things, as I said, patience and relationship. I remember when I was in the field in Nigeria, these people told me in the end, after I finished all my interview, after the tough time, I was so patient. My timeline changed, everything changed, budget changed, everything, but I cannot come back to Michigan from Nigeria and say I couldn't get any data. It's not possible. It's like me going back home and say I cannot finish this degree. It's not possible. So at the end, one of them told me that many people came before you, but we refuse to talk to them. But we are surprised that we have this long engagement with you for almost this number of weeks. I went there like 2 times, and I spent at least 4 weeks each time in the community. And I became like a community member. So he was telling me, I will never forget that statement. He said, "What did you do to us?" That's what he asked me. He said, "What did you do to us?" I said, "I didn't do anything, but I'm trained to be patient. I'm trained to work at your own pace when it is in your own terms, because it's voluntarily. If I'm not getting it, then I have to come back and re-explain myself to say why this is important and why I need more conversation." So I think keep those two things, like be patient and have multiple people look at the questions. Maybe they are not the right questions, that's why you're not getting the detailed or thorough responses. And relationships. People only share their secrets with people they trust. Some people in my culture will trust their own parents. Some people will trust their friends. There are secrets that even children don't share with their parents, but they share with their friends, because they know their friends are going to be protective. They will not do anything harm to them. So that's what I have to add to that.
I'll just follow Idris for a little bit. I think what Idris shared to me is really highlighting and underscoring the importance of ethics. It's not doing interview, it's just the methodological, technical stuff. You're talking to people, you're building a relationship. So from my side, even I don't do a lot of interview, I only did that for qualitative course. But because I'm coming from a background of educational philosophy, I think it is helpful to frame that as ethical activity. So in the first sense, being respectful, being patient, building a relationship, not bringing a merely utilitarian approach to the processing. I'm just extracting information used for my research. It's not you're building a relationship. So within that awareness, I believe that will impact the way you talk to people, the words you are choosing from maybe even you're not aware of that. It's like that's the ethical thing. And another thing might help you is that I learned that from the course. When you think about interview, you may think about in another world, in another vocabulary that may help you frame that. It's a conversation. So think about when you are having conversations with friends in a truly authentic way. it's not you're always imposing questions for others to answer. Sometimes you have to open up yourself as well. You have to receive, you have to ride with the flow. You cannot think about, oh, I plan to ask this and this.
Yeah.
So it becomes very mechanical. So think about the good conversations happening in life and the good people and the kind of people who are really good at having those conversations, and try to apply that into interview as well.
I think that comes with practice,
Yeah.
because it builds your confidence. And I look at myself interviewing first, I wanted to hit all the questions.
Right.
And now I take my time, I'm like, okay, if I don't hit this, I really got something amazing before. And it's still not great, I still need to make a lot of improvement. I think with practice, you're gonna get to that
Yeah.
conversation
Or
level.
transfer. You may say, if saying, I don't know whether people experience that, like maybe you talk, when you have conversation with a friend about some topic, you're really into that, you're flexible, but when it moves to interview, you kind of suddenly move into kind of very rigid methodological frame. But actually, it doesn't have to be in that way.
And just a quick add-on from my experience, because I deal with women, and these are like poor people who are moving from rural areas to cities. So many things are happening in their lives. And I remember an interview session for the first time, they said they don't want to talk. And even the people, like the elders, everybody said there's no problem, just talk to him. But at a point when I built that relationship, one of the girls said, when you leave, they will beat us. So you don't want to put people into harms because of your own research. That is not the intention of research. I think the intention of research is to solve problems, not to create more problems. I hope. It's to solve problems, to improve situations, not to make situations worse. So, I have to really be creative to say, whatever you don't want me to report, I will not report that. And that is a promise, and I took it to today. I will not report that data that I incriminated, even though I use pseudonyms, right? Not like the exact names. So people are confiding in you. And as a researcher, I think you have the responsibility to protect your participants as much as you want to protect yourself. Because your research, whatever research you do, whatever method you do, I think you should be aiming at making situation better, not worse. Because if you get the data, you write your dissertation, you get your degree, and the people are in harms, that is not a good way. It's like you just come and rob somebody, and the person is in pain, right? The person has lost everything, but you have gained something. So think of that, and that is the more important, I think, that is why it calls for more patience and a relationship. And you take it as a ethical dilemma, she said. If people say, I don't want to talk about this, if you try, you practice, and it's not coming out, I think you should think of a different question that will hit at the answer that you are looking at, because you can come from different directions, to get the same answer. So if people are really not coming because of fear of maybe attack, for lack of a better word, or maybe professional consequences, because some people, let's say a school teacher, if he or she said the principal is this, is that, and in a way, I don't know how that would be possible in an actual sense, the principal found out who said that. There may be maybe some consequences in evaluation. So you don't want to do that. So you have to be patient. You have to also be trustworthy. And when you say, I'm not going to say anything or report or write anything that you don't want me to write for people to see, you have to keep that promise as an ethical dilemma on you.
I just add a little bit. Small strategies, not related to what you guys talked about, because I think you guys summarized it really well. Just something, that strategy that make people talk more. I tend not to write notes. I do not take notes while I'm doing interviews, because you are going to transcribe it anyways, right? When you are taking notes, you are giving them pressure, and you are not looking at them. So I tend not to take notes, and also most of the time I try to tell them that we don't have to meet in Erickson or in a school building. So just be wherever you feel comfortable with, anytime. I'm 24/7 available anywhere. So a lot of those really good conversations happen in their dorm, in a coffee shop, 10 at night. So when they feel more comfortable, I think they tend to say more. And also a lot of times I tend to smile all the time. Not smile, but just smile, but do not say too much. I think a lot of times when you try to respond, they are still processing. So a lot of times you will see this really long, weird moment in my interview, but then people will feel, probably I want to say something, and then they tell you more, and those are a lot of very, very valuable moments. So I would say those are some. And also the other thing I would recommend is not about asking questions, but about recording. I tend to write everything about the environment that we had interviewed. So for example, we're having in a coffee shop, what she ordered, what I ordered, where we sit, what are the other people around us. Those small details will really help you visualize your conversation while you are analyzing the data. That give you more authenticity in making sense of those conversations. You'll have more ideas. So I think that's important.
I just want to give like a male perspective in the sense of like different times of being 24/7.
Yeah.
I feel like that's amazing because you get them in comfortable environments.
Yeah.
But being a male, and we need to be very careful where we're meeting the participants, mostly if it's from a person from a different gender. That we're not by ourselves with that person. We're not interviewing them after like an hour that is kind of considered business time. Because unfortunately, some things might need be misinterpreted. Because people unfortunately in the past made mistakes, and then other people who are having good intentions may pay for that. And also that sometimes adding the international perspective to it, the way I behave around women in my culture is different than American women expect me to behave. We touch, we hug, we kiss on the cheek back home. So sometimes that happens to me, but not in a research, but just in an interaction. I hung out with Brazilian people the entire day, and then I met a Canadian friend. I was gonna kiss her on the cheek. She was like, "Oh, what are you doing?" So I had no bad intention, but that can be misinterpreted, and then that can turn into a lawsuit, and then that can destroy her career as a male. So, yeah, I know just one here, but Adam as well. But Adam is from here, so he understands it better.
That's a great point. I don't have any. I think I have only one, but all the other participants are female. I think that's a really good point.
So one quick add-on to this ethical dilemma of gender. I know we're almost out of time. Like I hired a female research assistant because my participants are mixed, male and female. And IRB, I think, will take care of that because IRB, I don't know if you know what it is, it's Institutional Research Board. These are people that review like your research tools when you are a candidate before actually you are allowed to go to the field to meet your participants. So you need to submit your interview protocols, your advisor has to sign off, all of that process, we do it here. They make sure all the general ethical concern has been covered. And if there is any issue that they think you need to address, like me hiring an assistant, that came out, that I cannot meet, even if there is what they call chaperone, I don't know, in the US context, like somebody who is with the participant and with me. And I opted to hire a female assistant. But what I want to say, when you say what is the best strategy for having quality interview responses, my research assistant, I train her for a very short period of time and work her through the interview protocols. And she go into the house, talk to the mother. She come out, she say, I encountered this mother, she said she doesn't want to talk. And I listened to their conversation because she was recording whether the person decided to talk or not, because it's voluntary. There is no force. We recruited them, but she said no. When she saw there is a recording, she said, I don't want to talk to you. And she wanted to cry when she came out. I said, don't cry, that is a data for me. But not as much data I would like as somebody talking. While some mothers are happy to talk, some don't want to talk. And you don't want to force people when they don't want to talk. They don't want to talk, even if they are the right participant. Like they meet all the criteria that you set out for your research participants. But this person said, I don't want to talk. So you leave the person alone, because if you force the person, you are violating the IRB standards that say the participants must agree to participate voluntarily, no any force, no any coercion, no saying please, please. Like when I went to my field, they really rejected me, saying we don't want to do anything with you. And I was smiling. I said, no problem. I'm like you. I don't have any hard thing. I went back, rethink, and come back. They say, you are back again? I say, yes. Yeah, I said, because I'm a student, as I told you. This is the research, so I explain myself. Then they begin to sit with me to say, okay, before we do this, you need to talk to this person. This person says, you need to talk to this person. So that's how the whole gate opened until I said, I have enough participants. Thank you very much. So I will say, IRB, I don't know what is done in Nigeria. I don't know how they go about the ethics. But make sure when people are not ready, they are not ready. If they are not interested, even if they are the right candidate, and they say no, it's no. Because having a ethical little data is better than having an ethical mountain of data. Because we are professional people and we always want to protect our profession.
All right, we are at time, but I feel like there are surely more questions. So panelists, if you're willing to be contacted by anyone with follow-up questions, it'd be great if you could just write your name up on the whiteboard, and anyone, if you want to write down and contact someone that you have a follow-up question or something that's more personal and individualized, I think that would be a great route to go. But I really appreciate all of your insights and experiences. I feel like I have learned so much, and I feel re-inspired. So I hope that everybody got something out of this, and it's something that we can continue to do in the future and have these conversations, whether it's in person or Skype, and keep learning from each other. So thank you, panelists.